I'm going to freely admit I am biased here, but if your organization is not a member of IOG, you should really look into joining. I think you would be highly surprised at just how beneficial that membership will be. Just the value that you get back in terms of webinars and community support is worth it, especially if you're in a situation where your organization is on the verge of upgrading to EMS or you've just upgraded.
All right, welcome back to the Modern Membership Org podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. Today, I have an extra special guest. This is an individual who, when I first started with Bursting Silver, we were working on a team. She brought me under her wing, and she was an early start as well. And we were both getting to know the firm and the flow. So Ellen Turner is joining me today, and we're going to be speaking on the importance of community, specifically in the iMIS users group community. And she has a rich history of database management that she worked in education sector for the past 10 years. I know we'll get into it here for a little bit, but I'm going to hand it over now to Ellen Turner to maybe give us some background of what led you to this point and where you are now.
Yeah, thanks, Riley. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me. So, as you mentioned, I worked in education setting for over a decade, and I had many roles while I was working at a school. And towards the end of my time there, I spent approximately 3 years as a database manager in a database management position with a completely different database, but I really grew to enjoy that. So when it came time to leave the school, I spent a lot of time looking for a similar position, maybe with the same database, maybe learning a new database. And from that position, I was able to transition to a database management role with a not-for-profit trade association. And that's where I first heard of iMIS, learned iMIS, and really cut my teeth on iMIS itself. And after about almost 4 years there, I was able to transition to Bursting Silver as a consultant. And 2 months after joining Bursting Silver, we met and started working together.
Dynamic duo, power team.
Yeah.
Well, so when you're cutting your teeth on the whole iMIS introduction there, what I gather too, and a lot of the theme that we're going to draw on today, is that's when you first heard of the iMIS users group. And even from transitioning from your association experience over to Bursting Silver, you kind of carried that torch. What's it been like from first on the association side as the user group member to now with Bursting Silver as part of that community?
As somebody who had just started a position that was going to be managing an iMIS database, IOG was a real lifesaver to me. It was a great resource to just ask questions and be like, I am brand new. I don't know what this means or how do I accomplish this? And the community is just always so welcoming to new people. And a lot of people were just always respond to my questions via the listserv. And it was just really comforting knowing that other people had been in the same boat and they were now able to answer questions and offering to help other people. And so it was just really comforting and reassuring to know, like, yes, I can get this, I can do this, it's okay. And just knowing that I can always ask questions and not feel stupid.
It's important.
Yes.
Too many times I've been plagued by asking stupid questions. But I mean, I think that that's an important thing that you highlighted as well, where you have kind of a carte blanche, open forum to be able to ask questions and not feel like you are asking dumb ones.
Yeah. And I mean, I think it's important to know that, MIS as a database has been around for decades. It's gone through a lot of iterations, it's gone through a lot of changes. And there are people in the iMIS users group who have been there for most, if not all of those changes in some cases. And so they've been there from version iMIS 15 to iMIS EMS. And so they are like, there's like literally those people who are like, oh, back when I first started, you had to do it this way. And now you have this whole brand new system basically that allows you to do X, Y, and Z that we couldn't do when iMIS first came into being. So it's really interesting to hear like how much change has occurred within the system, and also to hear how they've adapted or had to adapt, or how they've brought their organization through the multiple iterations over the years.
Yeah, you gotta like the old war stories, like badges
Yes,
of honor, if you will, in the trenches.
absolutely.
So for those that are listening here, could you please explain a little bit about what IUG is? I'm sure our listeners are familiar with iMIS as well, but maybe just kind of highlight what it is, what it stands for, and the relationship between the platform and the group.
Sure. So IOG, or the iMIS Users Group, is a nonprofit users group for the system or software known as iMIS. And what's really unique about it, in my opinion, is that while it is obviously affiliated with ASI, it is actually solely independent of ASI. So, there is obviously a close relationship with ASI. They're having the joint conference this fall in November together to have offer the training, and merging the normal IOG training conference with the annual ASI Innovations Conference to host Emergence. But it is solely an independent vehicle from ASI, which, in my experience with the few other databases that I've managed, usually those user groups are run solely by the company that makes the software. So to me, that's already unique, because you kind of get like just that little step back of distance, so you can ask questions about like, how do people tackle this without always just kind of getting like the very cut and paste answer from the help documentation. So to me, that's a huge benefit that IOG is separate from ASI, just because it gives people a little bit more freedom in asking their questions. Maybe they've already tried to go to ASI support and they're looking for other solutions, other options, or maybe they just need a little bit of help understanding what maybe their authorized consultants, or their current customer service representative is trying to tell them, or like they just don't understand what process needs to happen. You just need that little bit of extra help with, while not affecting your company's budget,
Yeah,
for
very
example.
true. I mean, there's something to be said too. If back to the war stories and people that have been through it, it could be as simple as you're missing this toggle, or I've run into that before too, and here's how I fix that. It's, I would say, akin to looking on Google and finding that one person that has the troubleshooting guide on Reddit. You're benefiting from a community because there's a lot of people that have been through it, and kind of from a for us, by us perspective, you have people that are willing to support each other because they have been supported in the past.
Exactly, exactly. And, it's a lot of things. It's like I could spend, 30 to 45 minutes trying to read the documentation, or I can, send in a support ticket. But when I know it's a question that has most likely been asked within the IOG community, I know I'm going to get a response within 15 minutes, as opposed to maybe 24 hours. So, it just depends on on the type of question you're asking. And, by lurking on the listserv for a little bit or within the community, you kind of get a sense of which questions over time are better to ask via the community versus where that's very specific detail for a very specific configuration, when you just need to go ahead and submit that ticket to ASI support to get the very specific response for your configuration.
Absolutely. So you mentioned earlier the Emergence conference, and so you and I, some background for the listeners here, attended the annual IUG meetup in Nashville last year. Based on what you're allowed to share, we're not going to be ruining any surprises, but for an individual that's looking at going, even just specifically for the nature of those conferences, what can they expect for that? Go into a little bit of why should they show up if they've never been before. What is the value that they would get out of attending?
Absolutely. With the IUG conferences, historically, what those offer is hands-on training. And there's always pre-conference and post-conference offerings for either half-day training or full-day training that is hands-on, in-depth training on specific topics. And then during the conference days itself, there's 30-minute to hour-long, generally, sessions on, again, specific topics that are not going to be as hands-on, but they're going to give you real-world examples on how to do specific things like committee management, sending, how to use process automation, Plus or automating your workflow, things that, can help people get the most out of their iMIS configuration. And it doesn't really matter, how your system is configured versus the presenter's configured versus other people in the audience. I think that's one of the great things about IOG is just that they try to offer training that is applicable to everybody. When I lead these trainings, you have to pick examples to show people, but you always know that like the example is not going to be applicable to everybody in the office or everybody in the audience. And I try to, help people understand this by saying, everybody makes toast the same way, but like but in the end, no matter how you make it, everybody ends up with toast, you know? Or like maybe a better example now would be to say like everybody makes an ice cream sundae differently. Everybody has likes different flavors of ice cream. Everybody prefers different toppings. But just because you put caramel on yours and nuts and I prefer just chocolate syrup and whipped cream, that doesn't make my ice cream sundae any less of an ice cream sundae than yours. It's just the way that your sundae is configured. But like we would still be able to you would get the same type of information out of the presentations that I'm going to get out of the presentations.
Absolutely. Yeah. I love the mix and match Sunday. Yes. At its core, definitely. I think you're building on the same thing where it's support. It's an avenue or an outlet to come in and learn. I remember when we were back in November, there was sessions that were staggered throughout the day, dedicated entirely to getting your certification, which I think is huge, especially for individuals that are new with the system, are coming in bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, and want to have that hands-on experience because that's how they learn, not just through the online learning hub. It's more a better learning conduit to your brain when you have somebody being able to walk you through it and you can ask those questions that are coming up. So I think that is an amazing opportunity for new users, especially. You did mention too, when it comes to like in the office space, at least, you have that one person that may not be able to ask the rest of their team, their peers, their colleagues, because they're not in the same system. But there's also the idea too that IUG serves many different organization types, much like we do, associations, regulatory bodies, unions. How does the IUG community address or approach or keep those conversations alive for such a wide audience?
Again, I have to just kind of go back to just the online community or listserv, just because, people say like, hey, I work at this type of organization. We're trying to accomplish X, Y, and Z. I run into this roadblock. How do I get this IQA to pull the information I need? Or I'm trying to write this SQL expression to display this information, but it's giving me an error. What am I doing wrong in the SQL expression? Like that's how I learned SQL at my previous employer. I would try to do it and then it wouldn't quite, I'd either get the error message or I would get something different. And so I finally just like paste it in the listserv and be like, this is not doing what I want it to do. I'm trying to get it to do X, but it's doing Y. And somebody would immediately write back like, oh, try this. And I try it. I'm like, that worked. Thank you. And that's how I eventually gained the knowledge to actually start doing SQL expressions on my own and to start querying the SQL database. Because at the time, the organization was self-hosted on iMIS 2017. So I had to really teach myself a lot of SQL to start really managing and getting into the nitty gritty. But I think that, because IOG serves such a wide variety of organizational types, that means members are from all those organizational types. So if it's somebody from a specific organizational type, like, hey, does anybody else have this experience? All the other members from that organizational type's like, oh yeah, here's how we solved it. People will ask like, hey, how are there any other members from this type of base we're thinking about joining? And the executive director and the other staff member at IOG can put them in touch with similar organizations so that they can chat about, the pluses of having iMIS or other uniquely shared challenges so that they can brainstorm solutions.
I do like the trial by fire sequel approach,
Yes,
banging your head against it.
yes.
So maybe drawing back on that when you were but an early adopter of the iMIS, was there a standout moment with your experience in IUG that is kind of like your eureka aha moment? this saved me plenty of hours from banging my head against the computer? Is it just specifically for that SQL moment where you're like, yes, that is what I needed? Or was there another more in tune moment that propelled you to become more involved with the community?
So 2 weeks after I was hired, I was sent to my first IOG conference. And it's great because, everybody's there saying, oh, how long have you been working in iMIS? 1 year, 2 years. I'm like, 2 weeks. And so it was just so great how everybody just took me under their wing. And I learned so much at that first conference. I came back with just pages and pages of notes. And I finally understood like what some words meant that people had been talking about. And I was like, okay. And the one of the employees at our AISP, or authorized iMIS service provider, she was there and she took me under her wing, helped introduce me to other people who could help me learn things. And so, like I said, just people are very welcoming. They want to help people learn and understand how to make iMIS work for them and your organization. So it's just a very welcoming community. And I see it happen every time I'm at a conference. People find somebody who's literally brand new to the system and everybody just wants to help them and give them the tools and the information they want.
Just a bunch of helpers. Like, come under my wing. Well, I mean, on that point, then you're we looked at from when you started, and you kind of highlighted, or you're getting into it here already. But now, as an individual who's a seasoned veteran, who's doing sessions and teaching and walking people through those eureka moments, what's one that has stood with you during your time with Bursting Silver, or just being so in depth with the conference committee? It could be a one-on-one session, a conversation in the hallway, or even a session that you attended. Is there any thing that stands out to you as like a lasting moment?
Sure. So my very first conference that I was presenting at was in Chicago a couple of years ago for IOG. And I did a half day training session on events using the events module. And I was very nervous. I think it went well. It's 3.5 hours of just talking about the events module. And I mean, I love the events module, so I had no problem filling the time, but it was good. And then the next conference, which I think was back in DC, I was asked to do it again. I was like, yeah, sure, no problem. I can do it. So, tweak the presentation. And I was surprised when the session started because there were one or two faces that I recognized from having attended the Chicago presentation. I was like, weren't you in this last year? She's like, yes, but last year I was so new, I didn't really understand everything. But now I understand the events module more, and I feel like I'm going to get so much more out of this class. I was like, well, welcome back. Happy to help. Let's see what else I can teach you this time. So like that was really cool for me to be like, she recognized that she recognized that there was value in the class. She was able to take some of it back, but then she's like, okay, I understand more about iMIS now. I feel like there were things I might have missed. I don't care that it's the same class. I want to come back. And then she had a couple other colleagues at the next conference, and she was telling them, go to Ellen's sessions. And I was able to help her answer questions about which sessions she would go to if she was looking to learn about specific things.
Right, round two, ding ding.
Yeah. Yeah. So it was kind of nice to be like, okay, she came back. Like I presented something of value. So nice little reassurance.
Nice. And then make sure you fill out your comment card. Let me know what you
Right.
think, what you liked.
Always, for those of you listening, when you go to the IHOG conferences, please fill out those session evaluations.
Very important. So I think like we've talked a lot about the conference. We've talked a lot about the community. Now I kind of want to put the spotlight on you, and mostly the elephant in the room, the amount of acronyms that you have on the end of your name. You are the most decorated IMAS Learning Hub individual I think I have seen on LinkedIn. Could you tell me a little bit about all the um, certifications that you have at the end of your name? Maybe just give a little highlight of what they mean and what it took to get those.
Sure. So let's see. I have the CIA with a little I. That's a certified iMIS administrator. And then once you take the CIA and you've had a certain number of years of experience working in iMIS, you are eligible to become certified as a CIP, again, little I, and that's a certified iMIS professional. And then I also have a CTCA, which is a certified top class administrator, and that's specific to implementing and configuring and supporting the top class LMS. And then I also have the COWA, which is a certified open water administrator. And so that's for supporting, implementing open water. And then just last year, completed the work and the exam to become a CAPM, which is a certified associate project manager, which is outside of iMIS.
Collecting all those certifications like infinity stones, I like to say.
Yes.
So, I mean, among those credentials, obviously each one is worth its weight. But which would you say is the most underrated? Not necessarily from an iMIS perspective. I think a lot of them are geared towards features and understanding the platform. But for you professionally, which one do you think you got the most out of it too when it came to understanding the product or understanding your consulting support role?
I also forgot the size,
Oh
which you
yes,
and I both. The size of CI little I SE is the certified iMIS sales engineer, which is mainly for people in your position, Riley, for giving demos.
yeah, a little
I
demo magic.
Yeah, me personally, I just like learning. The fact that I got certifications at the end was just a bonus. I just like knowing what's available, what's out there. And for example, for learning, for achieving or attaining the CTCA and the COWA was just knowing more about those particular products so that I would be able to support any clients who wish to move forward with them in the future. Just I didn't want to have to be trying to learn that on the fly. I wanted to already have that certification should the need arise. For me, and then in terms of the CIA and the CIP, once you have the CIA, you're so close to getting the CIP. It was just very easy to just continue that path. Once you take the CIA, because you've taken all those classes, it's just a little more effort in terms of like the requirements to get the CIP. So I was like, oh, I might as well. I've already invested the time. I think that for anybody who is working with iMIS on an everyday basis, if your company or organization already has the Learning Hub, you should definitely look at either the CIU, which is a certified iMIS user, and just kind of goes through the very basic overview of how to use iMIS as somebody who needs to maintain data, enter data, perform billing, events management, the whole kind of overview of this is how you can make iMIS work for you. And I say if your organization has the Learning Hub, because if you have the Learning Hub, achieving those certifications through the Learning Hub is free. So it's really to your benefit to take advantage of those courses and achieve that certification. If you are a database manager or maybe who's a high user who's actually entering records or needing to create new tables to manage data, importing data in or out, doing high level content management, then I would highly suggest going for the certified iMIS administrator. And that's just the next level above that certified iMIS user certification, because that means you're the high level user. You're most likely the iMIS expert or one of the iMIS experts at your organization. And it's going to, again, give you some tips and tricks. Whenever I have to renew that certification, I always learn something new just because of the constant upgrades. So, as you renew, it's going to be a lot of the same information, but every once in a while in one of the courses, it's going to be something that's like, oh, that's a new little trick. I didn't know that was there now, just because it's so hard to keep up with all the updates on top of everything else that you're doing on a day-to-day basis. So it's just a good way to keep up to date if you're not already in tune with the ASI customer sprints or in tune with updates that are being talked about within the IOT community.
Right. Yeah. I think knowledge is power, and for a lot of those certifications, I've noticed that they cover the language, the you get the compass and the map, and you can actually navigate your system. for a lot of individuals who are diving into iMIS first time, I remember me when I first got started, it was figuring out where to go was difficult, and then that just compounds when it's your everyday workspace. So those are as much as certification as they are enablement programs as well, helping you at your own workspace. Now, you did mention a couple things too with the sprint reviews, the new releases. I know we're in the land of EMS Cloud, and a lot of new features are rolling out. Some are requested from users, and some are just new developments and ways to work more efficiently. However, for the individuals that are listening that aren't maybe on those communication channels or in those sprint reviews, if they are interested, where would they go to sign up for those? Or alternatively, who are resources in the community that would also be on the beat and know what those things are if they wanted to start to reach out to like-minded individuals?
Sure, that's a great question. So, being notified of those sprint reviews, you have to send an email to ASI. I believe the email address is productowners@imis.com and just request to be added to the sprint review meetings. There's also a link within the help documentation that lets you see all of the upgrade release notes. And whenever you log into your database and you see the banner notifying you that there's going to be an upgrade coming soon, there's usually a link there that takes you right to that page within the help documentation to see what the release is going to entail. Bookmark that page just because it's good to have that readily accessible. And then you can always like review back and see like, oh, what was just upgraded into my system? Or like, oh, I don't remember this feature being here. When was that upgraded? And you can just go back through. And then sometimes they also give a indication of what some future releases are, just because they say that, it'll literally say in the release notes, oh, we're doing this because it's in preparation for this future release. So that can also give you a little bit of a hint as to what the future plans are as to why this change is being made. Because it's say we're doing this change because it's going to support this future change. So that's another sneaky way, less publicized way to really stay on top of what's happening and what changes are forthcoming.
Following the thread, if you will.
Yes.
Well, yeah, I'll make sure to include that email or that link for the bookmark page in our show notes here for our listeners. But I'm just looking at the time. It's easy way to burn half an hour. It was excellent speaking with you, Ellen. Before we do our closeout, though, I usually like to offer our speakers an opportunity to leave like a gem or a nugget or a little piece of wisdom to pass on. And maybe from your perspective, it can be in regards to the importance of community, or even what you've known over the years as a seasoned senior consultant. What is one thing that you could pass on to the listeners today that would empower them in their workspaces, or something that you find extremely valuable?
I think honestly, I'm going to freely admit I am biased here, but if your organization is not a member of IOG, you should really look into joining. I think you would be highly surprised at just how beneficial that membership will be, even if you aren't necessarily able to attend the conference every year, but just the value that you get back in terms of webinars and community support is worth it, especially if you're in a situation where your organization is on the verge of upgrading to EMS, or you've just upgraded, or maybe you've had some staff turnover, and so you have some very new to iMIS users, or uh, young iMIS users in terms of length of time using iMIS. It's really worth the money, in my opinion. I don't think I would have gotten on the path to where I am today if the organization I worked at previously had not been an IOG member.
Fantastic. I think that is kind of the common theme that we're talking about today. Knowledge is power, and when you have access to a community of seasoned vets with their war stories, it's definitely an opportunity to empower yourself in your own workspace and share that wisdom, or pass that wisdom on, if you will. You like a good feel good story, and helping others who helped you. That is, I think, a really good part of that community.
Yeah,
Well,
absolutely.
Ellen, Thank you so much for being on the show here today. If individuals want to reach out, where can they get a hold of you?
My email is eturner@burstingsilver.com. And if you're on the iMIS listserv, just feel free to give me a shout and I'll see what we can do to help.
Sweet. Sounds good. Well, thanks again so much for being on board here. And maybe we'll have you on another follow-up episode after Emergence there to recap the conference activities and see how it went.
Yeah, I'd love to. That'd be great.
Thanks so much, Ellen. That's a wrap. Another episode down. The Importance of Community with Ellen Turner. She gave you her email, but you can also grab her on LinkedIn. Highly encourage you to check that out. If you like this episode, please consider subscribing. Give us a rating. We're on Spotify, Apple Music, anywhere you digest your podcast, and we will see you on the next episode.